Okay, so we're going to move on now to the student Q&A. So we've got the questions up from the whole sort of afternoon. If you still have more questions, feel free to please put them in the Slido or put them into the chat. We'll try and answer them. So Dr. Har is here. I'll just introduce everybody whilst everybody's here. So Dr. Har is back to answer some more questions. Kieran is here, who is our former CamWAMS Co-President and Associate Committee Member. Yasmin is here, who is obviously gave the SAQ course structure and debunking myths talk earlier, and she's a general committee member. We have Safa, who's a general committee member, also gave the personal statement talk earlier. I believe we'd also have Corey here, who is our graduate officer, and you'll see him a little bit in some videos if you watch the graduate MedLife stuff that we have. And then we do also have Arefin, who I'm not sure if his camera is working or not. Hopefully it is. Yeah, wonderful. And he's our incoming CamWAMS Co-President and MedSoc Access Officer. So Arefin, feel free to sort of take the stage.
So welcome, guys. My name's Arefin. I am the co-president of CamWAMS, and thank you all for listening so far. I hope it's been helpful, and I hope you've learned a couple of things. But we've collated the questions that you guys have asked throughout the whole Zoom call, and I'll kind of be asking people from our committee to kind of answer them. And yeah, if you have any other questions, just put it in as well, and we will try to get through as many as we can, ranging from the interviews, personal statements, the BMAT, all these other questions, and even like the graduate questions. We'll try to get through as many as we can. So yeah, if we start with the personal statement questions, one personal statement question is, would you mention any interest in specialists in your personal statement, e.g. if you wanted to go into cardiology or something? Kieran, do you want to answer this question?
Yeah, sure. So I think you can definitely mention an interest. So I did some of my work experience in a cancer hospital, and so I mentioned that I'd seen a lot of oncology, and that's very interesting to me. I would just be a little careful with how you phrase it. I think most doctors would agree that even at medical school, but especially prior to coming to medical school, you probably don't know what you're going to end up doing. So don't say, I want to be a cardiologist, because probably that will change. But you can definitely say, I've read a lot about cardiology and it's super interesting to me. And if you do some super curricular stuff based on that, that can be a really nice way to connect your work experience to some super curricular stuff and tie it all together. But I think it's quite a, yeah, it's fine. But just, you've got to phrase it in an appropriate way that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, Kieran, that's a fantastic answer. Thank you so much. The next question is, how many extracurriculars should we be doing, and are they important? Yasmin, do you mind answering this question?
Yeah, saying how many, that's not the point of a personal statement. It isn't a competition of who has the most. Like I said in my myths talk, it's not a competition of who's got the most extracurriculars or who's got the most interesting extracurriculars. It's not about that. It's Cambridge want to see that you have a way of stress relieving and showing that you've got not even like multiple ways, but just something that takes up quite a bit of your time. So if you put like one extracurricular, as long as you showed that you put kind of a lot of time into it to make sure that you're doing something other than medicine, that's what they're interested in. So yeah, how many, definitely not an answer. It's how many you want to be doing as well. If you just do one extracurricular, for example, it's music, but you play in a lot of bands and you really enjoy that, that's great. You don't need to have 7 other things going on. So do what you enjoy. And the point of extracurriculars is to show that you have an interest outside of medicine, not to see who can do the most and the most interesting.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. I think I just did basketball, and I just put it at the end of my personal statement in one line, and that showed that I had an interest outside of work in medicine. So yeah, Yasmin, that's a fantastic answer. Thank you so much. The next question is, how important is a work experience, and is it valued? Safa, do you mind answering this question?
I think most universities would, if you go on their website, they would ask you to get some work experience done. And they would also always, I checked the Cambridge website, and they do mention that it's okay if you don't have lots of work experience, because they recognize that not everyone has access to the same amount of opportunities. But it's try to do as much as you can. And there's also lots of virtual work experience that you can do online, so try to do that as well. And personally, for me, I didn't have any contacts with, big doctors who could offer to, so I could be shadowing. So I just went around to every single GP in my town and asked them individually, like emailed them and asking, can I shadow any of the GPs there? And none of them replied in a month. And then I went to every one of them physically, asking them. And then I think another month later, one manager responded saying, okay, you can shadow a nurse for 1 week. And that's what I talked about in my first statement. I did not get to shadow a GP. And I also went to a hospital and shadowed doctor consultant there for 2 days. That's all I had, really, clinical work experience. So you don't need to have lots of fancy work experience, but just try your best to get what you can. I think that's all I can say.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Like, another question that was asked before, is shadowing a nurse still appropriate work experience to talk about for applying for medicine? And Safa did a brilliant job of explaining, yes, it is. Any type of work experience, even if it's volunteering at a care home, primary school, showing that you're kind of working with people, showing that your communication skills are kind of growing, or any other skills type of are improving at different type of work experience. It doesn't have to be a GP or a massive fancy hospital. Anything around those lines would be great. So we have another question is, hi, Dr. Ha, if you don't mind me asking, what is your motivation for being a doctor? So.
Hi, whoever asked it. I think there are many things that can motivate you to do it, especially at the beginning. Some are good reasons, some are bad reasons. Like the stock answer is that you have an interest in science and you have an interest in helping people. My personal statement answer was that I had an interest in art and painting and fine art of the human form, and that gave me an interest into the human body, both aesthetically and physiologically. I could do the really kind of stereotypical answer, which is the fact that I'm smart and Asian, and that, like, that was kind of like suggested as a thing we do. I would say your motivation changes as your career goes on. For me, my main motivator is the fact that I feel like more and more our generation, people with our privilege of being able to apply to some of the top schools, to apply to med schools, we want to do something what's considered useful. More so than a lot of my colleagues who did economics or did maths and ended up becoming a banker or going into finance, and they are making way more money than I am. But honestly, like, I would rather spend time with an old lady with severe diarrhea than make another rich person richer. That's my personal motivation, is that I feel like no matter what I end up doing, I would like it to be that at the end of the day, I did something useful with my skill set and with my academics. Now, that motivation is going to be tested throughout med school, whilst you're applying, whilst you're doing the job. You just have to make sure, like, this, you have to kind of remind yourself, like, is it worth it? Is this what I want to do? And it would be a lie to say if none of us on this call was like immovably sure that medicine was the right choice. All of us had our doubts. All of us have hesitations. All of us worry if we can do it. All of us worry if we want to do it. But tackling those hesitations, acknowledging them, reinforcing why we want to do it is part of the game. It's part of the program. And that's kind of what's motivating me right now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hart. Yeah, if you ever want to put any input, Dr. Hart, as well, feel free to do so for the other questions. So yeah, we'll do a couple more personal statement questions, then we'll move on. So another question is, how should we reflect on medical work experience in our personal statement? Maki, do you want to answer this? Or?
Yeah, sure. So for me personally, I think some people have iterated in the past, but and sometimes students don't quite understand this, but probably the most important reason why medical schools and doctors ask you to do work experience isn't necessarily just to tick off any boxes, it's to figure out whether or not is medicine right for you. So if you go in there and you hate it and this is not for you, you'd rather be sitting in front of spreadsheets, that's a good thing, yeah? So make sure that you don't use it as a tick box experience, and don't use it as just I have to do this because the uni is asking for it. In terms of reflection, again, that's a super important aspect of work experience, and it's something that you will do as a medical student, especially here at Cambridge. You'll do a lot of reflection exercises and reflecting on your practice and your work. For me personally, what I did was I sort of kept a sort of diary at the end, sort of thinking about how did I feel about this particular day? What was the sort of experiences that I felt? Obviously, make sure that it's not containing any personal and private information from the patients, but it might be worth sort of discussing how you saw the team working really well, or how you saw a particular doctor or consultant really leading the team, or if you were in, let's say you were seeing a patient that was close to death, how well that sort of the doctors or the team sort of coordinated to make them feel comfortable and at rest. Alternatively, you can also discuss things that might not necessarily be super easy. So you saw the struggles of the NHS, that there might be short staff, there might be long hours, things like that. These are important factors that you need to discuss. And that is the most important part of doing work experience. It isn't to tick any boxes. And unfortunately, some universities, I won't name some of them, do ask for sort of evidence at how many hours you did, which is a bit stupid, I think. But the most important thing is to reflect on why you want to do medicine. Is this the right career for you?
Thank you so much, Mackie. That's a brilliant answer. And the next question is actually, would having a lot of experience or a lot of work experience help you stand out? And if I'll answer this one. And the answer is actually, well, no. It comes down to, what did you learn? How are you reflecting from that work experience? What did you learn about life as a doctor or life in healthcare? And how can you say, or what did I learn, and put it in your personal statement? So having a lot of work experience, again, it's not really necessary. It's during those couple days at GP or wherever you did your work experience, what exactly did you learn? And well, yeah, so more experience, not really necessary. And yeah. And the next question is, how do you group your personal statements in themes without repeating ideas? Corey, do you mind answering this? If that's okay.
Yeah, I might not be the best person to answer, to be honest. I'm terrible at English and essays and writing, but I would go back to the point, evidence, explain, thing that you used to learn at school. So make your point, explain it, talk about it, and then talk about how you can either apply that to medicine or why that's made you go down this route. I think I like doing drafts of things, but if you have sort of individual paragraphs and try and have a point for that paragraph, don't just try and make it all a huge essay. And then when you're done, try and group it all together. It's probably the best advice I could give, which I'm sure somebody else could give better.
No, thanks, Corey. That's a brilliant answer. Thanks so much. Another question for Dr. Ha is, how did you end up working in the US, and what was the process like?
Traumatic, I will say, in Britain. So I was given some amazing advice while I was practicing, and I was interested in surgery, specifically plastic surgery, breast cancer, skin cancer, that kind of thing. And speaking to plastic surgeons and most doctors in their career, you realize that medicine is not a degree. It is not just you get into being a foundation doctor. It is your life, pretty much. We are hoping to create lifelong doctors. And so it is a long road, and there are so many ways to do it. There seems like there's one treadmill that you have to go down, but that's not the case at all. And I met some amazing doctors who said to me, there is no one in the hospital who's going to look at you and say, did you become a doctor at 28 or 32 or 46? All they care about is, are you a good doctor? Are you good to work with? Are you nice to work with? Do the patients like you? So really design how you want to go through your life trajectory. And so I was at the process of finishing my foundation years and could have applied for core surgical training, but I had an interest in working in America or working abroad, because while I'm young and without any kids or responsibilities, we have that kind of freedom to try these different things. I had this thought in October of 2019. I applied for some jobs and got this job of January of 2020 while I was starting my respiratory rotation, and then a worldwide respiratory pandemic occurred. And then the previous president of America decided to ban all immigrants coming into the US, including banning all doctors. And so I was in a bit of a sticky situation. My visa application had to go through many iterations. At the end, I had to get a letter of recommendation from my work, a secondary letter of recommendation from my work to prove that I am necessary for the well-being of America as a nation. My application then had to go to the White House, and I had to get secondarily confirmed to be able to move during the pandemic and to move whilst Trump was in power. Wild transition, but right now I'm doing public health research in America, specifically because my interest is in health inequality, and there's nowhere in the world that has bigger health inequality than America. And so very roundabout way of kind of telling a bit about my life, but I would say that what you should take away from this is that when you choose to become a doctor or choose to apply to med school, this is to any of the students applying, even to like the people on the committee who are in med school now, like how you do it is totally up to you. And there is no correct way. There's no perfect way. The best way to do it is what you feel like you're passionate about, what you're interested in. Take some years out. Be a traveling musician for a year if you want to. Go do some research. Go into specialty training if you want to. Try a whole bunch of stuff. Like whatever it is that you want to do, it's such a long career path. Just make sure it's right for you.
Thank you, Dr. Ha. We'll do like one more personal statement question. And the question is, how should you get shadowing experiences? Is it essential to have? If you don't have it, and if you don't have any contacts in the medical profession? And I'll kind of answer this because Safa already kind of touched upon it. It is hard to get work experience, but you have to be a bit proactive, send out a bunch of emails to as many doctors in the local area as you can. I know one of my friends, he always went to a hospital with a cup of coffee, and he knew when the doctor would come in, and they'd ask him every single day, yes, please for work experience, can I shadow you? And just doing stuff like that, being really proactive and trying to get shadowing experiences would be really, really good. But again, at the end of the day, if there's any other type of experience that you can get, if it's not like shadowing a doctor in a hospital, that can still like work really well. And it's about how you reflect, what did you learn from it? And that's what they're looking for.
Sorry, I would also just, if you're looking for online work experience, Brighton and Sussex do a great one, and there's Observe GP with the Royal College of GPs, both of which are top notch. And I've known, I think a lot of applicants do, and most of you probably already know about it, but just throwing it out there for anyone who doesn't.
Thanks, Kieran. So we'll go on to some interview questions, and one question is, how can we be impressive in an interview? Yasmin, do you mind answering this question?
Yeah, I feel like it's, again, like a very subjective question. Absolutely, everybody will have different viewpoints, so it might be useful to kind of get like two people to answer it. But I think from what I've gathered, again, it's not all the things that you do, it's how you explain yourself. I think being confident is really important. Even if you have absolutely no idea, come up with something and pretend that you do. If you sit there and kind of go, and kind of are scared to answer it or scared to say the wrong thing, that's not going to come across impressive. Come across, yeah, I think definitely confident, being able to articulate yourself well, knowing your kind of work experience and things, ready, but kind of, yeah, because I've only really been an interviewee, I don't know what would make you stand out, but I would definitely say, yeah, be confident, know what you're talking about, even if you don't know your work experiences and what you've learned from things like that, you can definitely prepare for it. And yeah, that's what I'd say, really. So it's a bit vague. I was going to say Dr. Ha might have something a bit more better.
Yeah, can I jump in on this one if that's okay?
Yeah, go for it.
So it's very interesting being on the other side. If any of you guys get an experience as the med students to do this, you sit in an interview room and you see student after student come in, and then you see them back to back, and it's really interesting to compare questions. When I was interviewing, I was training as an interviewer as well. And what they did is they moved me from room to room. So I stopped with one room for half a day and then went to another room for half a day. And sometimes I met the same person in both interviews. I will say that my advice is that being impressive is such, like has already been said, is so subjective. But for me, it's about engagement and someone who is bright and has the kind of mental agility, is what I would say, to kind of engage with difficult topics. You come at me with wrong answer after wrong answer after wrong answer. But if you're constantly thinking of new ideas, new ways to look at the problem, you might not get to the absolute perfect answer, but I'm watching you thinking and I'm watching you tackle a problem. And that's really lovely to see. What's tough is that a lot of people get asked these questions and because they don't know the right answer, they'll freeze, and that happens a lot. The other thing I'd want to say is that now that I've seen people move rooms, you might think an interview has gone terribly. If you think, you can tell if you think it's gone terribly, and some people take that to the next interview. The next interview, those interviewers have no idea what happened in your last interview. So people come in already scared or nervous about what's happened in the last interview, whereas that is just shooting yourself in the foot. And I've seen people who had a first interview really rocky, they found really nerve-wracking. I thought they were doing okay, but you could tell that they were scared. And then in the second interview, they came in and they just came in fresh and blank and just tried again. And they looked amazing and looked impressive, not knowing that their last interview was not something that they were happy with. And so actually the interviewers, us, we don't see what happened on the other side. We kind of hear from each other afterwards. And so go in with a mind eager to engage. You're there because you want to show, not to show off, but you want to show that you can think and show your thinking pattern. And that people who are willing have the kind of bravery to kind of engage with us and to go with that. That is what we find impressive. I don't care if you can answer a whole bunch of chemistry questions quickly, correctly. I want to see you engage with us with difficult problems and to watch you try and tackle it. Does that answer the question? I find that interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Hollis. It's very good to get an input from someone interviewing us. So yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, I think it just comes down to, if the more confidence, the more relaxed you are, I think the better you'll end up doing. If you're going into the interview really shaky, kind of getting scared, which obviously is understandable, but when you are actually getting interviewed, what they're looking for is how kind of teachable are you? Are you enjoyable for the interviewer to teach? Because more time the interviewer is probably going to be teaching you if you are going to get accepted. Because if if you're applying for a certain college, the person interviewing you is probably going to be one of the professors or your director of studies or someone. So yes, if you kind of stay calm, remain focused, you can take your time. You can ask the interviewer, can I have a minute to think about this? They would love that. Take your time to think and then come up with a logical kind of answer. Again, it doesn't have to be completely correct. I don't think I answered anything correct in my interview, but I was just talking, thinking out loud, and that's what kind of impressed them, I guess. So yeah, if anyone has any other input, that would be good, I guess. If anyone else has anything they want to desperately say about that question. No? Okay. One question is actually, what medical books do you recommend prior to the interview? Safa, do you mind answering this?
I didn't read a lot of books. Earlier in my first statement talk, I mentioned that I read a book called Bad Science, which is not really, it's not really about medicine, it's more about science. So it's a bit different, but I think most people tend to read books that are autobiographies or some kind of account of the doctor's own lives. A famous one is the one by This Is Going to Hurt. That's quite famous, I think, because it's a little bit funny and it's easy to read. That's a good place to start. But I think I mentioned that earlier. If you just go on Medic Portal, they have a huge list of books. Just read any one of them that you think looks interesting to you. Those are the only two books I read that are medical related before coming to Cambridge. So I don't know if any of the other committee members have any suggestions.
I was just going to say as well, kind of read what book you think you're interested in. If you start reading a book and you find it really boring, again, it's not who can list the most books on their personal statement or who can read the most impressive books, it's what can you learn from it. If you're reading a book and you're not enjoying it and you're not getting anything from it, stop reading it, find a different one. It's about what you can get the most out of and what you can write the most or talk about in the interview, what's most interesting and what you learn from it, not which is the best book or most academic book to read.
Yeah, thank you guys. And going on from Yasmin's point, I actually did read a couple of books myself going into or preparing myself for medical school, but I didn't end up putting any on my personal statement. And it was genuinely just for like my interest of kind of getting a deeper understanding of life as a doctor or around scientific areas. So again, you don't really need to read books. It's not a competition of who's read the most books. If you start listing the books you've read in your personal statement, they don't really care. It's, if you are going to read a book, it's about what exactly did you learn from it, and how are you taking it on like a personal level. And so yeah, you don't have to read books this entire summer and get as much information. It's not really necessary. So the next interview question is, could you give an example of a science question being asked? Is it more specific to knowledge that there will be testing of what we have covered? Dr. Ha, do you mind answering this?
Yeah, totally. They could ask really genuinely anything. The best example that I can give is that we keep it very broad and let you decide the trajectory. So a common one is, on your personal statement, you mentioned that you read the BMJ student and you read journals. Tell me about a recent journal that you've read that you found interesting. And that is completely on you. It's completely on you to, one, check if you're telling the truth, but two, did you understand the journal and did you go into it? And I remember I got that one and I was like, I looked at this journal, I found it really interesting because it was the proteasome question, actually, that's from the interview. And it was interesting, you're talking about like viral destruction of proteasomes. Do you know what a proteasome is? How do viruses normally enter a cell? And like these, you have given the starting point and they will guide you. They might say on your personal statement, you've mentioned that you've worked in a diabetic clinic and really enjoy the blend of scientific knowledge with practical application. What piece of knowledge, science knowledge about diabetes have you seen utilized in diabetic treatment? Or it could be, I looked at your SAQ and it says here that you have done physics A-level and you looked at surface tension. Can you describe how you would work out the surface tension of a bubble if you were to blow a bubble? So these questions, I can't give you one to say this is an example. I can say that they really are trying to put something vaguely in your wheelhouse that might be a little bit out of your reach and see if you can get to it. And so it's so dependent on what your personal statement says, what your SAQ says, and what you choose to bring up.
Thank you so much. Another interview question is, what if you have a bad interview, but everything else is amazing? Would you still have a chance of getting an offer? Dr. Hard, do you want to answer that?
Questions are they are specific to people who've interviewed people, and so sorry if I'm taking more. I would say that there's when you come for an interview, if you come for an interview at John's, you have now 3 interviews done by 2 to 3 people. Each of those interviewers give you a score out of 10, and then the scores are added up and combined with your paper score. So I'm giving you now a very clear didactic, this is what we do. I will say now that very, very, very rarely let's say there were 7 people who interviewed you, very rarely do we get 10s across the board. So rarely. If there is someone who gets 9s and 10s across the board, they are getting a spot, but we interview maybe 120 to 160 applicants. We have 17 spots, and maybe 1 person or 2 people would have had 9s and 10s across the board. The vast majority of people would have stumbled at some point, but have made it up at other points. I would say that the only thing about the interview is that the scores that you get from the paper interview are really close. And so the interview can help differentiate. And so if you have a bad interview score, it's hard to have a paper score that will really, really beat it, because if all 7 people ranked you badly, that doesn't look great. Having said that, it's so rare for every single interviewer to rank you badly. I will say, though, that this is why the pooling system comes into play, is that in the pool, the winter pool, where you don't get a spot at the college that you applied to, but they put you on a wait list and you may get interviewed somewhere else, that often happens because people look really good on paper, but it looks like they may have had a bad interview day. And so they say, okay, great paper score, iffy interview score, maybe they were just super nervous, let's give them another shot at another college. And then they'll go to a different college and maybe they'll do great at the other college. Or maybe they will also do badly again. And then it's a case of, okay, it might not be nerves, it might just be that you aren't suited for this program. I would say that what you can't bank on is how well every other applicant does. Very rarely do people get 10s across the board. But in the year that I interviewed, the engineering department had 9 applicants for 7 spots. 9 applicants get 9s or above, 9 or 10s across their interviews. And they're just like, I mean, great, we have amazing applicants, but now what do we do? And so it's really hard. You can't control what other people did. They took the 7 that they wanted. The others went into the pool and got a spot elsewhere. So like, you can only do what's best for you. You can't control what other people do. Sometimes it might be the case that it's unlucky and you're just going into a super competitive year, or sometimes not. I will say that in general, medicine is competitive across the board. So there's not like an easy year, but we do genuinely take everything into account. You've heard that so many times today. So really do remember.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ha. That's so nice of you to answer that. A couple of quick questions is, do we pick the interview slots at times, or are we assigned to them? You'll be given an email with an exact time of when your interview will be. So yeah, you don't really get to choose when your interview can be. The next question is, if we have to travel for the interview, where do the interviewers usually stay? Currently, the interviews are online for most colleges. I think except Trinity might be doing them in person. Currently, they're mostly online, but in the future, if you do have to travel for the interview, I think the college will be willing to give you a room for a day or 2, and they'll sort that out for you. So you wouldn't have to go find your own room or your own Airbnb or something. So yeah. So Corey, do you mind? There's a couple of graduate questions, if you don't mind us answering.
Yeah, sure.
So the first one is, for graduate entry, are the degree result versus A-level results weighted equally?
So I don't know exactly, but I'll just talk from my experience. So it's kind of similar to the undergrad stuff. It does have a weighting, but largely I think you're more looking at your degree. You have a prerequisite of having to have a 2-1 in your degree. Some people, so I applied with an undergrad, and I applied straight after my undergrad, so I didn't have a master's or a PhD or anything like that. People who I was sort of like interviewing against had PhDs, masters coming out of their ears. So it's not essential to have the highest grades, but as long as you've got a good personal statement, you've got the work experience, that I think adds much more weighting than your grades themselves, despite Cambridge being a very sort of research heavy, science heavy course to apply for. So yeah, I'd say that A-levels are kind of just more of a tick box thing. I think you need your A-level in chemistry within A grade within 7 years, but even that's a little bit dubious, to be honest. There's people on my course who didn't do that, but just it on the website. So yeah, I will also be doing some videos on these as well. Admittedly, they're not up yet. I'm struggling to get them on, but they will be on at some point, and there'll be a lot more information on there as well.
Ooh, thank you so much. The next question is, for graduate access, how heavily are A-levels looked at if a first class is achieved, or A-levels are BBB due to extenuating circumstances? Yeah,
so as I was saying, it's kind of, they only really care about chemistry. I don't know for what reason, but they also love chemists as well who've done a chemistry degree. As long as you've got a B, I say, as a minimum, as long as you've performed well at university and got at least the 2-1, or you've got other academic prizes, that massively outweighs the fact that you may have a B, especially under any of the circumstances you may have been under at the time. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. I'd also get in touch with them as well. They're very happy. They want to help you. They don't want to reject you. They don't want to make things hard for you. So they'll be honest with you. But I can tell you now, there's people on the course who have been in a similar situation to what that question's described, and they're here and doing really well on the course. So.
Thank you, Corey. There's a couple more. Is there a limit to the colleges a graduate can apply to?
Yeah, so you've got 4 colleges. So you've got Wolfson, which is where I'm at, which is a great college. Not that the others aren't. You've got Hughes Hall, St Edwards, and is it St Edwards? Eddie's we call it, and Lucy Cavendish. Lucy Cavendish, St Edmunds, that's the one. Cheers. Yeah, so Lucy Cavendish now accepts male and females. It used to be female only. So you can apply to all 4 now. You usually just apply to 1, or you can actually, I think there's a selection box where you can actually say you don't have any preference. So yeah, they're your 4 options really.
And the last question is intercalation still required if you already have a degree?
So this is the 3rd year thing, isn't it? It's not required at all. You can still choose to do it if you want to. They're actually quite flexible with what you can do. There's also the affiliate course as well, which the downside to the affiliate course is you have to pay for your studies, whereas you get a lot more bursaries, and I think you still get student finance going through the grad course. It's a bit of a few differences there, but you can absolutely do things. So one of the other things as well is you have the beauty of doing the grad course is you don't have to do the tripos. You don't actually have to do essays at the end of every year for your exams. You just do the multiple choice papers, which is kind of a big burden off your shoulders, but you can still choose to do those if you want to, and if you want to get that sort of extra qualification if you want it. So it's quite flexible, but the idea is that you don't need to do those things. So.
Thank you so much, Corey. That is most of the graduate questions for now. If anyone has any more, please feel free to let us know, and Corey will try and answer them as well. So we'll go on to questions about the BMAT. And one question is, how would you revise GCSE physics if you don't do it at A level? Kieran, you want to?
So I think I mentioned it in my talk already, but the absolute best thing you can do is you can go on the BMAT website. They have a section on the website called Section 2 Preparation, and you click on that, you make a completely free account, and they have a full guide to all of the BMAT content, including the physics. From what I remember, I didn't do physics at A level, but it was enough to teach me the physics again. It is well explained, it is concise, and it is exactly what you need to know for the BMAT. So the first thing I would suggest is that you go on that website and you use those resources. If you're still struggling, there's a few, well, firstly, you can actually just ask a physics teacher in your school. Just go along at lunchtime and say, hi, I really don't understand parallel circuits. They'll probably be very eager to help you. But also if you you might still have your old GCSE physics resources. You might have a CGP guide. Again, you might be able to borrow those from your school. I would just suggest sort of using the resources you have. And then once you've got the principles down and you feel okay on it, just practice. Do a bunch of the physics questions. If you ever, I'd be shocked if you did, because there's about 20 years now, but if you ever run out of BMAT questions, paper 1 on the NSAA is very, very similar to paper 2 on the BMAT, but is a bit harder. But yeah, is well worth using. Yeah.
Can I jump in if that's okay, just for BMAT stuff? I caught the end of Kevin's talk, and I completely agree with everything that he says. One thing I do want to emphasize is that, firstly, just because you've taken the A level in it does not mean that you have the full spectrum of knowledge, there are different exam boards that do different things for GCSE. And so there is EdXL, there's AQA, there is Welsh boards and Scottish boards. They don't specify a board for what they count as GCSE knowledge. And so I went onto that website and realized that I learned nothing about the kidneys in my GCSE biology, and it came up in my year. And I was like, oh God. So do double check that. The second thing is that you can only prepare so much, but what I will emphasize is speed. It is a fast exam. It is a hard exam because every single person sitting this exam is predicted straight A's and applying to Oxbridge. So it's meant to be really hard, but it is also incredibly fast. And in my year, they're doing, I think it was 27 questions in 30 minutes for section 2. There were questions in the middle. It's not ordered by difficulty. And so there was a question in the middle, which is basically water comes through this pipe. The pipe diameter was this, and then changed to this, and then changed to this. What's the end pressure? Which is a difficult question. But the last 2 questions on section 2 were the easiest in the entire paper. And there are people who didn't make it to the end of section 2. So no matter what, like it's crazy to think about this because you are normally someone who answers every question in an exam correctly. I had to look at that question and look at questions and say, that's going to take me too long to work out. I'm going to have to skip it and do every question. And then if I have time, come back. And when I found out that the last 2 questions were like the easiest of the whole section, I was like, you're having a laugh. You're having a laugh. So just please finish the paper.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ha. That's such fantastic advice. And for the next question is, for the BMAT, what books / resources would you recommend for section 2?
I mean, I've already mentioned it. The BMAT website, you absolutely do not need to buy anything for the BMAT. For the UCAT, people talk about Medify, and I think that can be worthwhile. I wouldn't recommend any courses because honestly, the courses are just going to teach you stuff which you'll figure out from practicing anyway. But there's less free resources. For the BMAT, there are so many free resources. You can get question books. If you're really struggling, maybe consider it. But I would first and foremost say use the BMAT website. There is so much free stuff on there. And and you can use the NSAA if you run out of BMAT questions for section 2. And there's the TSA, which is the thinking skills assessment, which section 1 of that is identical to the BMAT section 1. It's just new questions you've not done before, with a couple of types that aren't in the BMAT, but you'll recognize them quite easily. There is so much free stuff that I really wouldn't recommend any book. The one bit people do struggle on is the essay, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think if you just make sure to hit off the 3 points they're looking for in every essay, I wouldn't stress too much about really working sort of putting a lot of time into it. Yeah, use the BMAT website. It is really, really good, and I can't recommend it enough.
Speaking of the essay, Kieran, someone wants to know do we need to use specific statistics in the BMAT essay?
If a question comes up and you happen to know a statistic that you think is relevant to it, and you know that it is correct, then sure, throw it in. But you absolutely do not need to use that as evidence. And actually, you're taking a fairly big risk that you absolutely do know it's correct when they can fact check you. So I probably would stay away from saying exact statistics, and I would use, you can use maybe a historical example. So using the surgery essay, which we did in my year, if you knew, that was about teamwork, and I knew that the laparoscope was invented by a team of like multiple different people, great. Or you could mention, you could even say, from my own experience in hospital, I've seen no patient is treated individually. No matter how good the surgeon is, they're going to be useless if they've not got an anaesthetist with them. That sort of thing is a great piece of evidence that is definitely true and doesn't require you to know any super specific piece of information. I would stay away from things like statistics, because also you can't predict the topic at all, because it can be literally anything. So if you can't predict the topic, you're not going to learn it. If you happen to know it off the top of your head, great, but that's not really something you can rely on, and you're taking a big risk that it is actually true. So I think I would stay away from statistics. Yeah.
Thank you, Kieran. And one person wants to know, is there how, or is there any space for planning and working on the BMAT because of when the exam actually is?
Yes, so I believe the BMAT has moved back to being on paper now. I think it was online last year and maybe the year before, but I believe they have now said they're moving back to paper for this year, but do double check. Either way, you should have some rough paper for working. If the exam is on paper, then you have a answer sheet, which you fill in the multiple choice bubbles for, or you write on, but you'll have some scrap paper to work on, and you actually have a question paper, which it can often be very, very useful to draw on. And I would recommend scribbling, making notes, crossing out things, underlining, whatever helps you get through the question. Because it's multiple choice, if you've got the question paper in front of you, you can cross out answers as you rule them out, and just do all these things to try and limit your potential for making silly mistakes, because there is a lot of potential for making silly mistakes in a time pressured exam like this. If writing things down helps you, go for it.
Thanks so much, Kieran. A couple more questions about the BMAT is for section 3, how do you do paragraphs when you have such limited lines?
Just indent a little bit is the best advice I can give you. I actually typed my BMAT essay because I was allowed to use a laptop for my exams. But you know, indent it a little bit, or just make it a new sentence. Just, you want to clearly separate each point so they're very visibly their own thing and you've addressed all 3 of them. Yeah.
Thanks, Kieran. And one, I think the question is, how long after the exam do you receive your BMAT score? I believe it's like the 25th of November.
Yeah, so I think they've changed a lot of the deadlines. Yeah, it is the 25th of November. They changed the deadlines during COVID, but I think, yeah, 25th November, about a month after you sit the test.
And the last question is, when would you do the BMAT, and how would you tackle the essay question?
So I don't believe you get a choice in when you do the BMAT anymore.
Yeah, I think so.
They scrapped BMAT August, which used to run, and even then a lot of universities didn't accept the August sitting of the BMAT. So I believe you now have to sit it in October. In which case you need to make sure you're registered by the end of September. You need to make sure your school has registered you by the end of September. And then you sit it, I believe this year it's the 18th of October, which is earlier than previous years. You'll sometimes hear it called BMAT November. That was due to changes they made during COVID. And then how would you tackle the essay question?
Yeah.
I spoke a lot about this in my talk, and I don't want to go through all of that again. The absolute most important thing is that every question has 3 subheadings. Address all 3 of them clearly. If you do not do that, you cannot get above a 2. And it is a very common mistake which applicants make, where they write great essays, but they do not address all 3 of the points and therefore cannot get above a 2. That is just absolutely the most important thing you must do. Yeah, you can go into a lot of depth with BMAT section 3, but the truth is, as long as you address all 3 points and you're using a reasonably logical argument, you will probably be fine. And I wouldn't worry too much about preparing a huge amount for it, given it is an exam which you do not know what the question will be, even vaguely. Just get used to writing, get used to the style of it. I did English A level. I felt quite confident writing it, and it definitely suited my skill set, but I don't think it's worth putting in hours and hours and hours of practice for it when it is such a varied exam.
I just wanted to say as well, just kind of, related to the essay, as I mentioned in my myth thing, lots of people stress about it. I'm massively overstressed. I didn't do any essay subjects for A level. I tried to ask my teachers, they were clueless. Nobody else was applying for Cambridge medicine. Nobody else was doing the BMAT at my school. I had nobody to ask, nobody to help. And I did badly. As I said, I got 2, and that was in the bottom 30%, but it didn't matter. So obviously, if you can work on the essay, brilliantly, but lots of people stress about it. And if you don't do fantastic, it really doesn't matter.
Thanks so much, guys. That's brilliant advice about the BMAT. And a lot of people have actually been asking questions about like teacher references. And I just want to say that we don't really have the best answers for teacher references. We don't really know how we would answer most of these questions. So if you do have specific questions about teacher references, like on your UCAS application, probably what would be best would be to email the college or the university admissions about your specific question about teacher references.
What kind of questions? What kind of questions have you got for teacher references?
So it's stuff like I left my school a year ago and now I'm working at a job, or can you have more than one teacher reference? Is it better to have a teacher from a previous school who's known you longer? Stuff like that, which I think are quite individual. So it might be, yeah. So I think
Yeah.
You can normally only have one teacher referencing. Yes, you want to get in touch with whichever teacher, and if there's relevant information, then they will try and add to it. We do take them seriously if you did have extenuating circumstances, but we have to know about it. So just try and provide us with as much information as possible. Sorry to jump in.
You know, thanks so much. Anyway, Dr. How do you mind answering this question? The question is, what is expected of gap year students compared to other students? Are they expected to do more kind of work experience, volunteering, and know more scientific knowledge?
Great question. I will say that I've noticed this now in this Q&A session, and I had Dr. Eunice's talk in the background. We aren't trying to give you trick questions or trick answers, and I know this question came up to him. We get these questions over and over and over again, and we aren't trying to trick you. His answer is completely sound. For gap year students, there are many, many reasons why people would take a gap year. We just want to know that, firstly, that you have a reason for taking it, and whether it's you want to travel, or whether you want to work to earn some money, or you want to gain some extra work experience, whatever. There are many reasons why people would want to. I would say that the main thing is that you want to keep up with some of your medical interests, whether that is still doing some work experience and making sure that you're keeping up with the sciences for your BMAT when you have to do sit-that. So like we are trying to give you the same answer. It's because there's no trick. We try to make everything as transparent as possible. I will say, I have a final note, but I can leave that for the end if there are any other questions directly to me. But I have a final note to tell you.
Can I just jump in about the gap year? I took a gap year myself, and my reason was it was not really in my control. It was like a financial thing. I just had to take a gap year. It wasn't my choice, and I wasn't asked about this in my interview. I think Dr. Cam Eunice, he was my admissions tutor. I go to Downing. He knew my reason, but I don't think any of my interviewers would have known. I did not mention my personal statement, and yeah, I think it was fine. I did have to say is like during the summer, before applying during my gap year, I had opportunity to talk to a Homerton admissions tutor, and he kind of said that they might expect you to have a better BMAT score because you've done it twice, or you know the A-level results might be more important than other year 12 applicants because your A-levels are achieved grades, whereas other year 12 applicants have predicted grades. That might be something different, but apart from that, everything else is the same. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, guys, for answering that question. Yeah, so the next couple of questions will be focusing on like A-level questions, and one is, do I have to take 4 A-levels to look more competitive or look better? Dr. Ha, what do you think?
This is a great question that comes up all of the time. On the board, there are schools in the UK that do not allow you to take 4 A-levels. There are certain secondary schools that don't allow you to do 4. Everyone has to do 3. And so it would be unfair of us to prefer the people who did 4 because there are people who don't have that advantage of the Cambridge degree. If you're able to get into Cambridge Medicine and do the course, you're probably someone who would have been able to handle 4 A-levels. So if you have the opportunity, you want to do the A-levels and you want to kind of like test yourself, absolutely fine. I did chemistry, biology, maths, further maths, and fine art. And I kept fine art because I wanted to keep that out of my own interest, not because I thought it made me more competitive, but it was just, I should be able to handle this workload. People choose to do 3 and do an EPQ or do some of their own research. They have lots of different reasons why they might only do 3. Make sure they still look competitive. I would say that if you want to do 4, do 4. If you don't want to do 4, then do 3 and choose something that will, you know, explore your supracurricular activities. And if your school doesn't let you do 4, then you can't do it. So it makes really no difference.
I just wanted to jump on and say again, I did 3 A-levels. I debated for a long time whether to do 4, and I asked admissions tutors and they were like, no, you absolutely will not be a bit like the extra personal statement on the FAQ. If you choose to do another one, brilliant. If you don't, you won't be disadvantaged. I did maths, biology and chemistry, started further maths because my maths teacher convinced me to do it on results day. Did it for a term and I absolutely hated it and I dropped it. And I applied to do an EPQ, but my school only let, I think, 4 people do it and 50 people applied. So I didn't get to do an EPQ either, but yeah, here I am. So if you want to do 4, great. If you don't, then you don't have to.
Oh, sorry, very quickly. So I did 4. I did maths, chem, bio, and English lit. But I actually, I enjoyed English lit. But actually, by the time the end of year 13 came around, I was so worn out from UCAT, BMAT, interviews, etc., that I really, really wish I dropped English lit. And I just wished I'd had that extra free time, because I don't think it contributed much to my application, but it did contribute a lot of extra work and a lot of extra time spent studying, which I would have rather used in other ways. So I think that's, yeah, it's entirely personal. And, you know, as it happened, COVID hit, so I didn't do the exams anyway. But it was definitely, you know, a consideration. And I think in retrospect, I probably made the wrong choice there to continue.
Remember that your offer is going to be largely based on 3 A-levels. Your offer is largely going to be 2 A-stars and an A. So if you can only get 2 A-stars and an A on 3, that's better than getting 2 A-stars and 2 Bs. Am I wrong in that?
Well, my offer was actually 2 A-stars and 2 As, which was why I had to carry on English. And that was another thing which I didn't realize would be the case, where I would have to carry on English. And I know others who ended up in similar situations. So it's just something to bear in mind, really.
I was going to say on that, I had friends who did 4, including further maths, and they were going to apply, and lots of people apparently do this, where they apply with further maths, they get their offer, and then they immediately drop it because they hate it. Cambridge are smart to this now, and sometimes they include the further maths as the 3-grade offer, so they might ask A-star, A-star, A with biology, chemistry, and further maths, that you can't drop it. So don't do an A-level trusting that you can drop it, because Cambridge is smart to that and might include it in your offer.
Thanks so much, guys. So we're running out of time, so we'll try to get through as many questions as we can. So one A-level question is, if you only do 2 sciences, i.e. chemistry and biology, and not maths, would that put you at a disadvantage? I actually do not know. Maki, do you know the answer to this?
I mean, Dr. Ha might be able to answer this.
It is dependent on your college, actually. So you have to, this is where you really should talk to your college, because there are some colleges who say that they would prefer you to have 3. There are many colleges who would say that you need at least 3 to AS level. Though the requirement is that you don't need to have 3 at your final A-levels, you are going to be at a slight disadvantage, especially if you dropped either biology or chemistry. If you take biology and chemistry as the only 2 that you took, and then maybe English or Spanish as your 3rd, you're slightly better off. But I will say that depending on the college, I know for John's at least, we would prefer you to take 3 sciences to A2. So really double check the college preferences.
Thanks so much. So the next question is, well, how long are your holidays? Well, so the Cambridge year is essentially 8 weeks term, then a 6-week break, 8 weeks term, then a 6-week break, 8-week term, and then the summer holiday, which is a couple months long. So yeah, because the 8-week terms are very intense, we get that 6-week break to kind of go over everything, revise everything you went over in the term, as well as obviously take a break.
Just note that during as the older you get, the shorter your holidays will be. So I think Corey and Dr. Hall will agree with me with that. So just be aware of that. You do just enjoy your holidays as they are in preclinical.
Oh yeah, please utilize them. That 3.5 month summer holiday, I made sure that I did a research project in another country to improve my academic rigor, and I would do a project in New York. People went to like Spain to do research, and it's like a great opportunity. So really utilize those holidays if and when you get in.
Just to chime in for the grads, anyone looking to apply for the grad course, you get very few holidays because all of your placements are in the sort of undergraduate holiday time. So yeah, make the most of them if you do that, and yeah, just cherish them because you don't. It's not the same as undergrad, unfortunately.
Thanks, guys. That's some great answers. So one question about colleges is how do you choose the right college for you, and where can you find more info about individual colleges? Safa, do you want to answer this question?
So the question about colleges, is it?
Yeah, how do you choose the right college for you, and where can you find more information about individual colleges?
I didn't think too much about choosing a college. I thought Downing was quite pretty, and it's really close to the medical department, so it's very convenient that it just takes like 2 minutes to get to any of your practicals, lectures, and everything. I think some things you can consider is like the location. Sort of, you can go to open day. I think there is an open day coming up in September. You can go if you want. The accommodation they have, the you know, how big it is, how big or small it is. You might want to be in a smaller community, or if you go to Gonzo and Keys, I think that's the largest college for medics. There's about 25 medics there in a year. It's quite big. Some colleges have about 7 or 8, which is a lot smaller. So you can choose based on that. I'm sure there's a lot of websites where they have a comparison of all colleges, and you can look at them. And yeah, I don't know what to say. I like Downing, but I'm not too. I wouldn't mind going to most other colleges. I'm not too patriotic about that. Does anyone else have anything to say? Because yeah.
I just note that I'll sort of wrap it up with another question with what does pooling mean? So we've used the word pooling a couple of times, and no, it's not. You don't have to go swimming after your interview now. But what it means basically is that it's meant to be a standardized process. So that means that if you apply to one college and you get considered for that college, but if that college feels like you're good enough and you are suitable for the Cambridge course, but they just don't have enough places for you at their college, you'll be put into what we call the winter pool. And so another college can pick you up. They can either interview you again, or they might not interview you again, and they can give you an offer from there. We also have the summer pool, which is when you have been given an offer, and then, for example, you might not have got exactly the offer that you needed. And if there's any spaces left behind, you'll get put into the summer pool, and one at a college could pick you back up. I forgot what the question was anyway. I think it was about colleges. Oh yeah, make sure just to go to the colleges and see them. I think that's one of the best ways to do it. Again, if there's an open day, go see them, speak to people, speak to us. If you have questions, then ask us. There's obviously lots of stuff on the website.
I think the next open days are 15th and 16th of September, so just go if you want to look at the colleges.
I know that we're aiming to wrap up. Is it okay if I just say a quick thing to like the participants who are still here? If that's all right. On the other side of you guys or the 90 of you who are watching right now, thank you for staying for the whole day. So many of you are worried and nervous about getting in and what it takes to get in and whether you should get in or whether you should apply. I will recommend just try thinking about it from our point of view, is what I tell my students. Is that imagine that you are running the admissions of Cambridge University Medicine. What would you do and what would you want? You have some of the best applicants applying to you. How do you differentiate who's good, who's going to survive on the course, who's going to do well on the course? It's a really, really tough decision. And we take it really seriously, but there is no quick fix. The amount of times I've heard questions of, how many GCSEs do you need? How much work experience do you need? How much score do you need? How well in interviews do you need to perform? There's no single bullet answer, because if you imagine from our point of view, we have so many pieces of information about you that we really do genuinely have to weigh it all up. Think about it from our point. We just want the best students who are the brightest, who could learn the most, and who would really enjoy this course and thrive in this course. So it doesn't matter if you had 6 GCSEs or 9 or 12. It doesn't matter if you read these 4 books or you didn't. We just want to make sure that you found some way to demonstrate that. There is no trick. There is no secret answer. We don't want secret answers, because we want the best of the best, so we make it as transparent as possible. We want to get the best people from anywhere in the world, anywhere in the UK. So there's no secret way to get into Cambridge, because what we want is we want everyone to apply. So we make it, everything we say, everything you see on the website, everything we give for free about how to get in, because what we just want are the best people. There's no trick, there's no scheme, there's no backstabbing, there's no, we only want private school people, we only want state school people, we only want white people, we only want people of color. There's none of that. We just want good students, all right? And that's it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ha. Do we have any time, if you have any more time for any other questions, or should we wrap it up?
We might just get final thoughts from everyone.
Yeah, so we'll do final thoughts from everyone on the committee, if everyone doesn't mind. So thank you all for coming. I hope you learned something. I hope this the MedLife was helpful, and I hope it was helpful towards your application in the future. Good luck, everyone. And again, with everything, you know, medicine is going to be tough to kind of apply for, but with the interviews, you know, stay relaxed, stay calm. You'll get through them. They're not trying to trick you up. They just want to know how you are as a student, and just want to ask you some general questions. And with the personal statement, just keep making draft after draft after draft until you're extremely happy with it and it's absolutely perfect. Show it to other people. Get people's thoughts about what they think of your personal statement, even if it's like your friends from school, because even that could actually help out a lot. I know I did that quite a lot, and people they help me word my sentences better, and stuff like that. So ultimately, good luck, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And yeah, does anyone else have any other final thought?
I mean, I think mine's a bit more general, but just make sure to look after yourself. It's very, very stressful applying to medical school. It's a lot of effort over a long amount of time. You know, take that hour to go to the cinema with your friends or whatever. Not that films now are an hour long, but like just take that time to look after yourself every now and then and make sure you're still doing the things you enjoy. It's definitely something I did not do very well when I was applying, and I think I probably could have done a lot more. Make sure to look after yourself. It's a long, long process, and you deserve to, you know, look after yourself every now and then and do the things you enjoy still. And yeah, good luck.
I was going to say, kind of like, following on from Kieran, pace yourself. It's not this big rush. Let's do BMAT, let's do this, let's get into med school. Okay, we're there, because once you start, it's very busy as well until forever you're into a career as a doctor. So this isn't let's try and just do it all. And also a piece of advice somebody, an Oxford applicant gave to me when I was applying, or an Oxford student, was love your second choice uni as much as you love Cambridge, because, you know, I think it's about 1 in 6 applicants per place. Great if you get in, chances are, like, lots of people, there is a very high chance that you won't get in. And love your second choice university as much, so that if it is a rejection and you've got an offer from another university, you're still in a great place. I applied to Newcastle and absolutely fell in love with it so much that I almost rejected my Cambridge offer, and I put in my Newcastle deadline thing in June, the day before the deadline, because I couldn't decide between Newcastle or Cambridge. But it just made it a lot easier if I did get rejected from Cambridge. So they say don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't put everything onto Cambridge. And if you don't get in, it's the be all or end all. Once you become a doctor, they say they don't really care which medical school you went to. It doesn't matter. As long as you're a doctor, you're achieving your dream. And it's easy to say from a Cambridge student, but don't get hung up on Cambridge. It is not the be all and end all for medicine.
Safa, any final thoughts?
Not really. I think everyone said everything. Yeah, don't stress too much. Yeah, just take everything slow. I don't have anything else to say. Good luck.
Corey, do you have any final thoughts?
I'd say, not to be negative, but if you do fail and you don't get in the first time, first of all, you can reapply as many times as you want. It really doesn't matter. But also, from my experience and just from other people on my course in my year, if you do fail and you decide, actually, I want to try something else, go and do it and enjoy yourself for a few years, whatever you want to do. If you want to get a job, want to go to uni, do something completely different and follow that, you can always come back and reapply at any point in your life. There's guys in our course who reapplied at the age of 30, absolutely loving it, thriving on the course and enjoying being a student again, I think, after all those years. But yeah, it's really, there's no rush to do medicine, is one thing I would say. If you're not sure if you're 100% on it still, you know, you'll find out when you get on the course, but sometimes people just prefer to take a few years out doing something different, and you can always come back to it at a different time. So there's no rush.
Thank you so much, Corey. That's such an amazing thing to say. Yeah, go on, Matthew. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think thank you so much for everybody for coming. Hopefully it's been useful, as Arefin has said, and hopefully we've answered as many questions as you can. There was too many questions that we couldn't answer all of them in the time, but hopefully we answered as many as we could. Just a reminder, just for my final thoughts, make sure that if you have any personal queries, make sure you ask the specific admissions offices that the colleges that you're applying to. Unfortunately, we've been obviously giving quite general advice, and if you have specific circumstances that might change your application, you should ask the admissions offices of your relevant colleges that you want to apply for. You don't have to ask just one person. Some people ask all 31. I mean, I think that's a bit much, but you can ask whichever colleges you want to apply for, ask them, how does this work? Am I able to do this? They're happy to give you an answer. But we'll sort of wrap up here. Hopefully you've enjoyed the day. I've posted the feedback link into the chat. If you complete the feedback link, we'll endeavor to try and get you the recording of this talk or all talks within the next week or so. Also follow us on our socials, follow us on our website. We're planning to hopefully do our mock interview session as we do every year in November. So once you apply to Cambridge, you can apply for our mock interviews in November, and hopefully we'll be able to run those. But yeah, if you have any more questions and you're sort of burning questions still, feel free to just message us on our socials, on our website, email us, or maybe not email us because for some reason we've run out of emails to be able to send out. So I don't know. But anyway, just ask us. We'll be happy to hear from you, and please give us some feedback. And if you sort of have any thoughts on ideas or future events, please do let us know. Once again, thank you for joining. Arefin, do you have anything else to say?
Dr. Hard, do you want to say anything before we wrap up, before we leave?
I think that you guys have covered it amazingly. I will say that I could not agree more with what has been already said. I will say that on the other side, when you finish med school and you're practicing as a doctor and you're doing it on the other end, there's so many choices that you make. There are so many things that can occur. I have met so many students who I'm like, you are an amazing medical student, but you would hate being in Cambridge. And I have taught Cambridge students who are like, you shouldn't have applied here. You're incredibly smart, but you don't want to be in this system. Cambridge is put on this pedestal, but it's a very specific type of med school. And I completely agree of, if it's for you, it's for you. I had so many backup plans, and my mentality was, look, this is the best I can apply with. I've worked as hard as I can for my GCSEs, my A-levels, my personal statement, my BMAT. This is it. This is me. And if you don't like it, I did everything I could. I literally did everything I could. And Cambridge is crazy competitive. So I'm not too butthurt about it because I know it's hard, but I did everything I could. And really at the end of the day, I just want to be a good doctor. And on the other end, people are right. No one really cares that much. People will know if you're a good doctor, and that doesn't depend on your medical school. So really, look after yourselves. Best of luck with applications. Be kind to yourself as well during the application process. Find out as much as you can. See if this is for you. If it's for you, great, and huge best of luck. But it is not the end of your medical career either way. And just thank you for coming and joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. So thank you so much to the whole committee for joining us, and Dr. Ha for joining us, and Dr. Yunus for coming as well. We hope you got a lot of use out of it. Again, please fill in the feedback form. It's really helpful for us to improve our events in the future, and follow us on our socials or on our website or our newsletter to be able to get up on updates on our events that are coming in the future. Okay, thank you so much, everyone.